All right, welcome to part two, which shows that belief in absolute behavior is a position of faith. This part matters because it shows that we operate on faith, not science or logic. So, what is faith? Faith is believing in something that cannot be proven by science or logic. Science and logic can neither disprove nor prove a position of faith. They are simply in different realms. Based on this definition, there are three criteria for faith. They are active belief, which according to part one we all have, and also that it cannot be proven by science or by logic. Our belief in absolutes cannot be proven through the use of logic. As we discussed earlier, we presuppose the absolute behavior of the laws of logic when we use logic. So I can't use logic to explain absolute behavior. That would be circular reasoning. It would be like using absolute behavior to explain where absolute behavior came from. In the same way, science presupposes the absolute behavior of the natural laws. That is, if the natural laws changed, then the scientific method would be totally unreliable. So if science presupposes absolute behavior, then it can't be used to explain absolute behavior. That would be circular reasoning. There are some other reasons why science cannot explain our belief in absolute behavior. Since science and logic are so intertwined, if logic cannot explain absolute behavior, then neither can science. There is also the issue of error. Error makes it impossible to be certain of any scientific explanation, so one could never be sure of a proposed scientific explanation of absolute behavior. To be sure is to have faith and go beyond science. Lastly, it is beyond the realm of science to predict the future. Yet that is what would be required of science should it be used to explain absolute behavior. Science would have to explain how something will behave in the future. However, science only interprets past and present evidence. If our belief in absolute behavior cannot be explained by science or by logic, then it has met the three criteria for faith. One might object, saying that if my argument relies on a position of faith, then how can it be trusted? After all, isn't faith totally subjective? My answer is that I did not bring the faith. You brought the faith with you when you chose to believe in absolute behavior. So if you think that faith is unreliable, then all you have to do is stop having faith, and this argument will not apply to you. You might find that rather difficult, though. You could start the process by purchasing a safety strap in case gravity stops working. So here we have part two filled out, which is that belief in absolute behavior is a position of faith. If belief in absolute behavior is a position of faith, and everyone believes that absolute behavior exists, then the conclusion of parts 1 through 2 is that everyone has faith that absolute behavior exists. And we exercise that faith quite often. In part 3, I will show why absolute behavior needs an explanation.